Hi everyone, so today I'm doing a review on the Viseart Grande Pro Volume 1, which I recently did a project and wears with this palette, so if you want to see that, I'm going to link that in the cards. And I wanted to get my thoughts out while they're still fresh in my mind. I got this for Christmas from my sister, but I also bought one for my sister as well, so we kind of gifted each other what we wanted. This palette I actually bought off the UK distributor. I forgot the name of the website, but I'm going to put it on the screen. I think it's Love Makeup UK or something like that, because Muse Beauty Pro does actually ship internationally, but the shipping fees to Australia are extortionary, so I didn't order from them. And at that point, from the interview with Muse Beauty Pro and all that, it sounded like this palette wasn't actually going to be available on Beautylish and only on Muse Beauty Pro, so I kind of wish I had waited for it to come on Beautylish because their customer service is always great, and I think with the exchange rate it actually does work out to be cheaper on Beautylish. So if you do want to order from one of those three websites, I would highly recommend Beautylish if you are in Australia like I am. Now I can't remember the exact cost. I'm going to put the details somewhere here, but from memory it was roughly $250 Australian once I did the conversion and included shipping and everything, which I don't think is too bad for 35 Viseart eyeshadows, because if you buy a 12 pan palette from Viseart, they do cost $100, so it's a lot already, and that doesn't even include shipping. So it's not a terrible price, but for a palette itself, it's expensive. It really is one of those things where if you really like Viseart eyeshadows, you'll probably want to buy this if you don't have the shades in here already. So this is kind of a first for Viseart because the packaging is very different to what they usually offer. It folds up like this, and it does have a mirror, which to me is, I guess, a good thing if you want a mirror, but personally I don't mind that much. Actually, I do like Viseart eyeshadows for the fact that they have a clear container so I can see everything at once. This palette comes with 35 shades, it's all matte, and I guess the premise of this palette is that each row has different tones, which I think is actually really clever. I like the way that it has been laid out and designed. I like that I can easily, if I want a pop of color, go for this column. If I want a deepening shade, I can go for this column. I guess the only thing about these kinds of palettes, when they are segregated by tones and light to dark, sometimes you do have to think a little bit more about how you're going to use the palette. Most palettes these days are kind of laid out to help you figure out what shadows go with what. This one just gives you the shades and says, here you are, here are the colors, go forth and play with makeup. You do have to think a little bit more about how you're going to incorporate the colors sometimes when shadows are placed like this. Some people like it, some people don't. I don't mind it. I think for me, this is a clever way of presenting eyeshadows. So I do like it personally. I like the fact that the pans are able to be removed really easily, because I would probably swap this out with other Viseart eyeshadows. My thoughts on this palette and the application and the quality, I find that this is a very inconsistent palette, unfortunately. I don't think some of the shades live up to the usual Viseart's quality, and I'm not exactly sure why. I did note that this was made in the USA and the ingredients are different from the usual palettes. I'm not an expert on chemistry or anything, but that might have something to do with why this palette doesn't perform the same way that their standard palettes do, which is really unfortunate. In particular, this last column I found to be particularly patchy, a little bit difficult to blend. You'll see in my demo, I used this shade here. It just gave me a hard time. Now I can make it work, but I don't want to have to go to all the lengths to make this work, because this is a $250 eyeshadow palette. I shouldn't have to make things work. I also did find some of the shades did not really appear very pigmented on my eyelid. For example, this one, I use this in my gradient eye, but I really did have to build it up and build it up and build it up to actually keep its kind of lavender purple purpleness. Is that a word? I would also say that these shades did also have a bit of trouble appearing on my eyelid. This navy blue doesn't really show up on the eyelid as it does in the pan, which I wish it did. I do enjoy this column. I find that these three shades I really love. The navy, not the best navy. The purple, not the best purple. Probably my favorite shades out of this palette, I would say, are this burnt orange shade, really nice. This mauvey purple shade I also really like. The mustard shade is nice too, but wish it was a little bit more mustard. It's what I'm wearing on my eyes now, and I'm going to do a demo of it if you want to see how I got this look. And I also enjoy this bright fuchsia shade. And again, I really do like these mid-tone browns because I do find, I'm glad that they included some of these shades because there are gaps in the Viseart eyeshadow range. They don't actually have that many, as strange as it sounds, kind of light to mid-tone browns. So I'm glad that they actually brought some of these shades out. So there's that. There's some shadows that work great and then other shadows that are really a disappointment because I have the majority of the Viseart palettes and I really love them, and I just wish that this palette had kept with the same quality as those ones. Would I recommend this palette? Probably not, unfortunately. I am happy to have this palette. The majority of shades are beautiful, but there are so many inconsistencies in here. I can make them work. I just don't want to have to work that hard. I mean, that's the whole point of Viseart eyeshadows. So a little bit disappointed with the overall quality of this palette. For $250, I would hope that and expect that all shadows are the same quality, because that's what I was expecting, the same Viseart quality that you find in most of the palettes. And unfortunately, this one doesn't quite deliver on that. I know it's kind of an unpopular opinion because everyone seems to really love this palette, but if you're spending $250, it's a lot of money, and you do want really good quality across the board, not just, 75% of the palette. Don't get me wrong, I can create a lot of nice looks with this, and I will be still using this palette because the majority of the shades I do enjoy, but I just wished for a little bit more. So for $250, I probably would stick with one of their existing palettes. I highly recommend the Warm Neutrals palette. I love that palette. It's a great palette. The Neutral Matte palette is also great. The Editorial palette is great. The Dark Mattes palette is great. I don't have the same inconsistency issues as I do with this one. Anyway, if you want to watch a demo of how I got this look, I'm not going to do swatches because, in fact, I'm going to link Stephanie Nicole's review on this palette because she does swatches. I don't think I'm going to add anything new to the table by swatching them on my skin, so I'm going to link her video in the description bar below if you want to see that. So I said I would do a tutorial on the most requested look from the Project 10 wears with my Viseart Grande Pro. Angelica, you did say that you liked the fourth one, and that one was my favorite, so I'm going to do that one. So I'm really glad someone did say that they liked it. So basically this is a fairly simple look, and I'm going to do a variation of this today. I'm going to use the same colors that I use in the Viseart, but I'm going to swap out the shimmer. And the whole point of that is, you can actually add any shade in the center of your eyelid as an accent or a halo eye. So the first shade that I took was this shade here, and this is a kind of deep reddish brown, and that's what I'm going to use as a base for my halo eyes. Last time I used the primer potion and it gave me a hard time, so I'm going to just use on a bare lid, which generally is okay. I find that this shade does go on a little bit patchy and difficult to blend, so hopefully this is going to work out, but you'll see what I'm talking about when I start trying to apply it on my eyelid. You see, it's just a little bit harder to blend than usual. Okay, so I kind of just added the outer V a little bit into the crease and then take it in a wing shape because that's the shape I like for my eyes. And then I've also added this in the inner portion of my eye as well. You feel like you've added too much, which I feel like I have, just blend it out. I'm going to do the same thing to the other eyelid. By the way, there's a lot of sound outside, and that's because I live in an area where there's a lot of construction going on, so it is never quiet around here. So then I used this mustard shade in the crease, so that's what I'm going to do here, and I'm going to take a slightly smaller brush. I think I'm going to take this one. This is my Chikuhodo T8 brush, gives a lot of precision. So I'm just gonna add it into the crease. Again, with that blending brush, just clean up the edges a bit. I'm gonna build it up a little bit more. So that's what I did for my halo eye, and before I put the shimmer on, I'm going to add some color to my lower lash line, and the shade I used was this eggplant purple shade here, and this one also gave me a hard time. I'm going to take this small detail brush and just stamp it onto my lower lash line. I always feel like problematic shades tend to work better in smaller areas like this. I'm going to take this other 3 brush and just smudge it out a little bit. The good thing about these, at least, is that they don't have fallout, which is appreciated, although I'm not the kind of person that swirls my brush around. If you do that, you probably will get some fallout because these are quite powdery and dry. But for me, the way I'm using them, with the brushes I'm using, I'm not getting any fallout. And then I did use Colourpop Play by Play on the center of my eyelid, but today I think I'm going to do something different, especially because I'm doing my Project 10 wears concurrently with this video. I am going to take one of the shadows from the Enchanted Secrets palette by Linda Hallberg, and I'm going to take Ethereal, which is kind of somewhat similar. It's yellow with a green shift. So for me, I'm just going to pat it on with my finger. Blend it out just the tiniest bit, but not too much, because obviously want there to be a metallic reflect. Just to intensify the dark portion, I'm just going to add a little bit more to the inner portion of my eyelid and the outer as well. I'm also going to go back in with a little bit more of that mustard shade into the crease. And this is the finished look. I think it looks really nice. And again, I've just used the Viseart palette as a base palette, and then you can go in with a metallic shade, or if you want, you can even use a lighter matte shade for the center of your lid. So today is your lucky day because I wasn't actually going to do any form of swatching, but then my sister said that there might be people out there that will be interested to see how similar this palette is, well, some of the shades at least, to the existing Viseart palette. So I'm going to be swatching the 5th column, and I'm going to show you different shades that are somewhat similar to what Viseart already offers, because even though they are new, I feel like actually there are some similarities. Not exact dupes, but close enough, and that might be enough for you to not want to buy this palette. So I have got bare skin. I haven't put any sort of primer on because I know some people like to wear eyeshadow without primer. I'm going to start swatching the orange shade. So this is the one from the Grande Pro. Just went in a bit heavy there. And then we've got an orange from the Warm Mattes palette, and this is what that one looks like. It's slightly brighter. The orange from the Neutral Mattes is, I would say, less intense and more neutral, obviously not as warm. And we've also got an orange from the Dark Mattes palette, and this is what that one looks like. This one is deeper, and I feel like it's more brown based. This other orange is also from the Dark Mattes palette. This is obviously lighter. So these are basically the orange shades, which are somewhat similar to the orange in the Grande Pro Volume 1. I feel like on the eyelid, a lot of them would look very similar. So then we've got this mustard shade from the Grande Pro. I suppose it's not technically a mustard, but it does pull fairly yellow. And the closest thing I could find to that was this shade from the Warm Mattes palette. It's not really similar, so there wasn't that many shades in there that looked quite like this one, at least from the Viseart palettes that I have. So next we have this bright fuchsia from the Grande Pro, and somewhat similar to that is this shade from the Editorial Mattes. I would say this one pulls more of a red pink than this one. I'm not great at describing shades, so you can see with your eyes and determine what you think it is yourself. By the way, don't get the pink on your table because it does stain. It's really annoying. Moving on, we've got this purple from the Grande Pro. Sorry, that was kind of a really bad swatch. Let's just do that again. And I found the only thing similar to that was this purple from the Editorial Mattes. They're in the purple family, so that's as similar as it gets. And then last bright in that row is the navy. And this is one swatches like crap. So I'm gonna layer it again. Sorry, I just think my arm wasn't quite dry. Sorry, guys. I guess you've got the two blues from the Dark Mattes palette, which I will show you how similar they are. This is one of them. And I feel like this, well, it's way deeper. And then you've got this one, which I feel like is more similar. But again, all three blues are fairly different. Now, Belle wanted to know how similar this row was to the Marvelous Mauves because she reckons they could potentially be really similar, and I have both palettes. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the shades I feel are similar and then swatch that next to Marvelous Mauves. So I think the conclusion is, if you have the Marvelous Mauves palette and you were interested in the purples in the Grande Pro palette, you don't need this palette because that got you covered. Good eye, Belle. So those are my overall thoughts on this palette. Let me know if you've got this palette, what your thoughts are. And if you haven't, are you interested in picking it up? I would also want to know if there was a volume 2, which I'm pretty sure is in the making. Would you buy that one? At this point, I'd probably not. I'd wait for there to be more reviews and see what other people think before I make such a great investment because, again, not a cheap palette. Anyway, thanks for watching and I will see you next time.